Hey guys, it's me, coming on strong. Hope you are feeling blessed no matter where you are. If you clicked on this video, it's to talk about a topic that I think is very interesting to us that are what we would call ascenders, those that are believing and understanding that they're on a divine journey. I come forth with this message because I just got back from a cottage vacay. I was at a very beautiful location up in northern Ontario. It was a lake setting, had a jacuzzi, had a fireplace, had a tree house, had a trampoline. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Great time for my kid, great time for me. I love all that stuff. But I want to talk about this impeding and impending feminine and masculine dynamic that is truly being shown in all facets of existence to those that are on a divine ascended journey, because we are really truly at a stage where we're trying to develop and really bring forth the best whole soul self that we can be. And what that means is that we need to embody both the feminine and the masculine sides of oneself into coalescing into one whole soul self or oversoul, and to acclimate with all the aspects of that of which we are, higher self, higher selves, all encompassing in one divine being that is aka us, the third dimensional version of us on this stream of existence. So this, as we go through this journey, we are shown things by God, by the universe, that we can't really unsee. We cannot go back to these lesser, lower-ended versions of ourselves, because in a sense, in this one incarnation, we have managed to do something major, amazing, and a lot of us are going through this revolution, still going through this revolution, maybe just coming on to this journey, and we've got a foot in the door and we're walking through the door, and that's where you are. But some of us have been on this journey for some time, and I would say that a lot of us that are presently in, maybe let's say my wave or the same as your wave, is to really recognize this feminine and masculine within ourselves so that we can actually become this well-rounded individual. How this started for me, I've been going through it for most of my time, but I've noticed that a lot of us that are on a divine path tend to be, let's say, celibate, alone, single. Some of us have found our divine counterparts, and kudos to you. And some of you are just lying to yourselves thinking that you have found someone divine, but really you're still in the grips of a narcissist, and you're still in the grips of a lower-ended relationship, fighting through it so that you can actually blossom into the divine being that you are. And if you are in a narcissistic relationship right now, I'm the queen of the fighter of the narcissist. Us empaths, angelics, tend to go through a lot of different narcissistic relationships. It could be one, like for myself, I went through one with my cousin Shanna. I went through one with multiple men in my life. So I had a female version. I had multiple men versions, including my father, my first husband, the last guy I was with. And I know now at this hindsight stage that all of these persons that were so intrinsically in tune with who I am as a developing human being from the last, 40 years of my life shaped me into this better, well-rounded version of self. It was only through battling through these major narcissistic relationships that a lot of us empaths and angelics actually start to realize our true worth, our true understanding of self, because it's through fighting through these relationships and fighting for ourselves that we actually become whole. We start to see our true worth, we start to see our true sovereignty, because it becomes them or us. And if you are someone who's going through a narcissist relationship, you might get to realize that God puts us in these relationships solely to bring us out, to blossom, to really fight for what is truly ours, our own sovereignty. Because if you're someone who hasn't really struck your true stride, God will put a narcissist in your path solely so that you find that awesomeness that you are, and you claim it and you get through it. And what I can say is that this particular weekend was very inspiring for me to understand more of this feminine masculine acclamation that a lot of us are going through, and why a lot of us are single, and why a lot of us are celibate, and why a lot of us haven't really jived with a lot of partners, or any partners for that matter. I was with these couples at this cottage, and it was just so striking to me. These are couples that I knew for a long time. Some of are maybe 5 years in, 6 years in, whatever the case may be. And in my older version of self, because I was very unhealed, because I hadn't gone through all of my narcissistic trials, and because I hadn't done that, claiming of self, a lot of what I saw presently would have been more normalized. But a lot of you know that God shows us this discernment and this understanding of, the world around us for a purpose. So when I was in this single state of being at this cottage, I had these 3 couples, all different. I had a dynamic where it was my friend and her man, and then there was another gentleman that I knew, and another associate of a friend of mine, or what I would call a friend. I've known her for a while, but it's like she's not my closest friend. And then there was this middle couple that was like my friend's sister's friends that was there, and they were in the middle ground where they're just like there. They were just a there couple. Like, they're not happy, they don't showcase that they're happy, they're just there for each other, and they're kind of just settling. And then on the male side, I saw this one guy who is being kind of belittled and made to be so small by this seemingly pretty girl who is like I said, someone 6 degrees of separation that I've known for a long time, but I've never actually seen her in like 3 days span, day and night, night and day and night type of thing, where I could actually see the dynamic of what was truly going on. And what I saw was a very nice man who was being belittled and small-ened every which way possible by this woman. She is stunning, she is pretty, she is someone that people wouldn't seemingly think is a bad person, but if they really sat back with some godly discernment, they'd be like, wow, she's really just a demasculating woman. Like, the whole time, like, she was baby talking him, like, oh, isn't he so great? Oh, he's wonderful. Oh my God, did you see his little fire that he put together? Wasn't that fire so beautiful? It was so sweet, him putting together that wood, and it just the way she would talk and demean everything, every action he did. And like, actually, a fire is sustenance. Actually, a fire is something worthwhile action that we were all needing. And this woman kept belittling this man's activity. And then at the same time, when he was gone, she was complaining the entire time about how he's useless and how he's not good for her in a more darker, the baby talk disappeared, and then it became oh my God, I can't believe this guy is so useless. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm with this guy, like, the whole time. And then my friend with her man was a totally different dynamic, because I don't spend a lot of time with her and her man day and night, night and day and night. And literally, my friend, I realized, is in a horrifying relationship where she is just giving everything that she is for someone that's not even worth a damn of her time and her beauty and her wisdom and her awesomeness. And then there was that middle couple that just settled. Like, you could just tell that they were just like, I'm here because you're here, and we're just here. There was no kissing, no hugging, no loving between all 3 of these couples. And yet they were on these 2 spectrums. We got the demasculating feminine, and then we had the defeminizing masculine, and then we had this middle couple that wasn't finding their awesomeness and their peace and their solidarity and or their own ability to be the best selves, because they were just sucking each other dry of their own worth. And it was just so wild to watch. And it actually gave me so much clarity about why I might still be single. And why you might still be single, because once God shows you a lot, you can't unsee it. You know what I'm saying? So it brings me to this idea about the masculine and the feminine, and how much it is in balance. And it's not just these couples. I see this all the time in different ways, shapes, but this was in my face. And considering that in this last month, like I said, I'm trying to get my eye on, well, I had Lord Yeshua kind of guide me as to what I should be doing to help it along. And I was told to read the Pisti Sophia and the Apocrypha of John. And the Apocrypha of John and Pisti Sophia do kind of discuss 2 figures that are very feminine based, or the feminine energy in its totality as a creative essence of the creator. And it was very awe-inspiring, because all this time, I didn't just read it this weekend, but I've been reading it for some time, where we are at a stage where we need to learn how to balance these 2 energies within ourselves. I've spent a lot of my life being more on the logical masculine side, get her done. When I was in my last narcissist relationship, I was actually carrying the weight. I was the protector, I was the provider. I was, even though my partner supposedly, you know, would show everyone like he was this, but really back in the ranch, like I was the one holding everything together. I was the one doing all the dirty nitty gritty work. I was the one who was getting everything figured out for us. So really I was taking on a huge masculine role all the time, and I didn't realize that. So if you're somebody who's watching this right now, you might be in this exact dynamic as a woman. And we were taught as women that maybe this is what we should be doing. Like we should be these, like, you know, they always say, oh, a good woman represents behind a man. But at the same time, it's like if the man is not actually holding up that masculine trait, what happens is that it forces the woman to take on that role, and the whole dynamic is off. Okay. And at the same time, so that was something I realized this week, and I was like, wow, I used to be in a very toxic masculine dynamic with my ex. I saw this a lot with my friend and what she was going through, because she was the one holding everything together. All things needed to be found at this place. She was the go-to person. She was the one organizing. She was the one arranging. These are more supposedly masculine traits in a lot of women, because the males in this world, not the gentleman that was there, but a lot of males have been taught this toxic masculinity, where they do not want to take on that leadership role anymore, or they don't want to even aspire to be this masculine quality or have these masculine qualities anymore. They're kind of leaving all the work to the woman from both sides. So not only does she have to be a lover, she also has to be a provider, she has to be a nurturer, she has to be a cook, a maid. All of the hats have to be worn by a woman. And then on the flip side, there was this one woman who literally was doing nothing other than looking pretty, and the guy was having to do all of the feminine stuff too, meaning like he was the one that had to nurture her ego, he was the one that had to nurture her sensibilities, he was the one that had to like not only like decide everything, do everything, so he was fulfilling the masculine side of things, he also had to like nurture all of her mental like dysfunction, and actually like take on a more feminine role, and kind of bide and knuckle under a lot to her toxic masculine side. So I was there as this like equilibrium staring at this, and then there's the couple that's in the middle that is not happy on either side. They weren't embodying either of these traits for themselves. It was more of a fear of just being alone and not wanting to be their most awesome selves and maybe find those awesome persons that would join them too. They were just there. And that's an even sadder energy to be in. So if you're someone who's in that relationship, please reconsider this. If you are on an ascending journey, you may have to break out of that in order to keep acclimating within the energy and also the entirety of the soul self. Because I was reading that book more so this weekend. And if you're not familiar with the Apocrypha of John and the Pistis Sophia, they are Gnostic texts. Gnostic texts would have been texts that were around in antiquity, probably in the Egyptian or Ethiopian rite. They were texts that were part of antiquity that kind of got dispelled and taken out, because in the Council of Nicaea, they were not included as parts of what the modern day King James Bible, Protestant Bible, Catholic Bibles in general. But it doesn't mean that they weren't actual texts that existed at that time, if not even before that time. So the Apocrypha of John talks about this feminine aspect of, or the first. She was seen as the first. Her name was Barbelo. And she would have been the counter to the male energy of God. So she would have been the creatrix, put it that way. And it was very well understood, at least from this book, that Barbelo would have been the creator of the aeons. And if you don't know what the aeons are, they were all the aspects in the 13th dimension of God. Like, because if you have to understand, there are layers and facets to all of creation. Okay, if you could look at time, space, those are facets. If you could look at wisdom, that's a facet. So it was said that Barbelo was a light that was within all. Okay, so even in the darkest creations, there was still Barbelo's existence in the dark, and within the light creations, there was still a dark aspect within the light. So there's that idea of yin and yang all through creation. Now, if you don't subscribe to this, click off. But if you're interested, please read. It is in that text. Also, then comes one of the aeons, which is Sophia. Pistis Sophia is the book that I was led by Yeshua to read as I've been waiting to acclimate with my eye. But it is very intriguing, because it talks about this one aeon, which is the light-bearing aspect of God, which would be wisdom, okay, who starts to descend from the 13th realm and descends lower and lower and lower. What most would understand, like even when Yeshua came down, there's a descent, and there's always this idea of a descent, even with the fallen angels. They fell from high and descended down. And where did they descend? Over here. So there's something about this realm that, you know, kind of mirrors a darker place to all of the like beings in creation above. So as PC Sophia went through these dimensions, or these realms as it was put in this PC Sophia book, she was a light being who wanted to understand light in the fullest capacity, and in order to do so, she wanted to be more acclimated into the Christos knowledge, and the Christos knowledge is one of a unity, and in order to be a united entity, period, you have to understand both sides. That's why it is so important for us to look at our shadow, because within the shadow we find way more illuminance to our whole embodied self. So Pisces decided to do this descent, and as she descended in each one of these realms, she was fought and met with one of these archons, or one of these darker entities, or this grouping of darker entities that were trying to defame her, debase her, take her light, etc. And as she would be descending, she was always calling on to Yeshua, the Christos side, the male side, the masculine version of herself, in a sense, to save her, help her, guide her within her descent. And it was very understood that Christ, or Jesus, was there all along to kind of save her through each one of these layers. And there's this understanding through this book that it was very apparent that it's kind of like an allegory, and it's kind of like a metaphorical understanding of what us as beings go through as we descend to the third dimension, and as we're trying to acclimate within our soul self, that we have to kind of find, as we've descended all these layers of ourself and go to those dark places, call on Yeshua, try to find the light, try to preserve the light, grow within the light, but at the same time understand that we have to see both sides. And why I'm bringing this up is because as God shows us on our journey, we cannot turn a blind eye from the discernment and the ability to see through all that is not correct, or all that is not of the highest intent of the soul self. And as more time goes on, I notice that there's more and more people that I'm shedding, and more people that are there as perceptive mirrors for me to realize that I have more work to do. Because when I met these couples, obviously there are parts of myself that I'm still navigating, because I, like most of you, and I'm sure a lot of divine beings on this journey, empaths, angels, starseeds, whatever the case may be, a lot of us are alone, and we wonder why that is. And I know that I asked that many times, like, how, if I think I'm, you know, a good, wholesome, decent human being, and I've got a lot of, you know, box checked, why is it that I'm still alone? And I think that this actual cottage scenario showed me the two versions of self, meaning like what it's like to not fully develop my masculine side, what it's like to not fully develop my feminine side, and how if I were to just be with someone sheerly for the sake of being with someone, how I would just get stuck in the middle. And I feel like a lot of us are going through this in our journey because we wonder why we are going through this trial of understanding why we're still alone. And I want to share this, that we do have to really take hold to what our masculine and our feminine are doing, and what our light and our dark are doing. If you have not perceived what your shadow self is, the shadow is all the parts of you that you don't want to face. They can be ones of self-doubt. Some could say that there are parts of you, let's say, that feel like imposter syndrome. They could be abandonment. They could be all parts of the self that was wounded a majority of the time within childhood or throughout one's life. And the more you actually dive into the shadow and really look at those parts of yourself that you don't want to, you illuminate these situations and these past times and these past understandings, or let's say memories, and from a different perspective you can actually take hold to what they are. And sometimes you can find more light and more worth and more wealth of self within the shadow. So when I was reading this book about Pisces, there were so many parallels that I understood where she was coming from. And I truly feel like a lot of us in this time are not only trying to acclimate in our Christos self, the male, like the male dominated, let's say masculine side of ourselves, we're also trying to absorb the Pisces Sophia side of ourselves, because the Sophiatic side is an initiation, and so is the Yeshua Jesus side, because it's like, how do we become full love of oneself, self-love of others if we don't actually combine these two sides of oneself, and then at the same time understand what it means to descend as a masculine feminine entity within the realms of all of that of consciousness. And I know this seems like a lot of work, and I know it seems like a lot that we are meant to go through, but it is something that is evolving within all of us. A lot of us are learning that there is a lot of toxic masculinity, the Andrew Tates out there that are teaching men that, oh, you got to be macho, and you got to have this, and you got to have money, and you got to have this kind of like gym rat attitude to like be seen as a masculine. And then you've got the other side with the whole defamation of beauty out there, which is just making outrageous understanding that beauty equates to asking men for money, like as if they're somewhat just like supposed to just be these pretty things that just ask and absorb money just for being. And that's very what's the word, because when you're a feminine, you're supposed to attract. And at the same time, it's like if you're demanding these things, that's actually very masculine. So there's an imbalance that's happening. It's like, oh, I'm pretty and I demand this, and I'm pretty and I demand that. You're actually in a very masculine state, because you should be attracting, you should be getting given these things or handed these things, not because you demand, but because you are. Like if so, and I don't mean that, beauty has to equate to money. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you need, let's say, strength, if you need, let's say, wisdom, if you need, let's say, protection, etc., from a masculine energy, you shouldn't have to demand these things. They should just be given to you because you're in the feminine state. So there's a lot of this misunderstanding of like what it means to be feminine and what it means to be masculine. A lot of women out there are being squandered. A lot of women out there are being used as sexual creatures, and they're being exploited for their sexuality, not understanding its energy, not understanding that there's a creativeness in that sacral chakra section of the entire whole of our soul. And to really diminish that light is to really go against our Sophiatic initiation. And at the same time, it's kind of going against our Christos initiation, because we are supposed to acclimate into both sides. What I want to really put forth is that if you are someone who is wondering why you may still be single, why things haven't worked out, I truly feel like in this time, we have to take shape as to what our feminine and masculine traits are. Prepare ourselves for both of these initiations, because Yeshua will be making his entrance soon enough. And a lot of us, in order to maybe, and there's even these women out there that do feel like they're the brides of Christ. Most of the women that do feel this must probably go through a Sophiatic initiation, because that's something that Mary Magdalene had to do in the time of Yeshua too, because she was also a master of the Sophiatic rite. And what I'm trying to say is that after seeing this all this weekend, I was like, wow, I'm being shown this imbalance, and that might be a reflection of who I am. And it might be because a lot of the time I'm like most women, feeling like that little girl inside. And I'm not ashamed to say this, because there's a lot of men out there that are feeling like little boys inside, the princes waiting for the princesses, and in the feminine side were the princesses that are waiting for their princes. There's this weird dynamic that we're taught that, even from a young age, that we have to play these roles. And in some instances, I think where I'm getting to is that I have to be okay that maybe I'll just be a princess who becomes a queen and just leads in her own right. That might be the case, but it has to come from a whole place. And I have to be okay, and you have to be okay from either side of where you may stand. And I'm not saying that we're going to be alone. That's not the point. What I'm trying to say is that the reason why we may be alone is because we cannot get away from what we were shown by God. I cannot, pander to, ignorance anymore. I cannot pretend I'm something that I'm not. And if you're somebody who is in the same state as me, we must really work on helping our brothers and sisters understand this, because that's what I spent most of that weekend doing, was really trying to talk to them and show them like, oh, this isn't really cool that you guys are doing this to each other. And I would say that I think a lot was learned from all of us this weekend, because I learned why I'm okay to be single. The middle couple realized, and they got an earful from everyone about how like, I don't want to say the word lame, but it was kind of like I wasn't the only one saying it. And then the other ones, like, it's like as if my friend was needing to be with that guy, and that guy was needing, and that girl was needing to be with my friend's man. It's like they actually would have combined and made a better couple, like if they just switched partners. It was wild to see. But it was all because of this misbalance of the feminine and the masculine energy. And that's happening across the board. And I do feel that the more we strive to find this balance within ourselves, and the more we kind of come and walk into this awesomeness, we'll have an easier time. So I myself know that I have not met any males that I truly feel have washed away all of the facade for themselves, that there are not in a toxic masculine space. And there are some men that have, gotten out of that, and I'm very proud, and they've become leaders in their own right. But then I've met many that think that they're leaders in their own right that are not, that are being, belittled and dictated by the women in their lives. And realistically, if you're still being dictated to or told, a leader should never have to have their partner kind of decide everything for them, and a leader shouldn't need to look to others. They should be more very well rounded within oneself. So if you do feel that you are pressured to be something you're not, and still use gimmicks and facades to get across love that you're deeply inside wanting, that's something scary, because a lot of us are not willing to go there. And that's the part of the shadow that we all have to possess, understand, and be okay with. Because to say to the world, this is who I am, and then maybe not get reflected it back, and maybe not find love, and maybe just be alone, it is a very scary place to be. But it is hella scarier to be something you're not, and it's hella scarier to come from a place of a facade of a pedestaled idea that is not truly who you are. And that's all I want to say. I love you guys. Good night. Bye for now.